Here. I am Greg Nedved, and if you haven't guessed already, I'm ethnic Czech. So this particular program today, even though the focus will be on Texas, has special meaning to me because I have a feeling I'm going to learn about my own Czech heritage. Okay, today's program is about the Texas Czech Legacy Project. The first here, I suspect, for some of us, and we have two people that are responsible for that particular project that are here today to talk. We have Dr. Lida Cope, who, as I understand it, is the founder of the project. She's the main person involved. She is a professor of applied linguistics at East Carolina University, and she is very interested, obviously, as you can guess, in basically surveying, finding out what she can about Czech communities across Texas and probably beyond that as well. Her partner in this presentation is Dr. Ann Stepan, who not only has a background in the Czech language, but the Russian language as well. And she is helping Dr. Cope with this particular project. So that's pretty much all I want to say. I want to give them, obviously, the chance to get going. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully you will find this to be a very educational and inspiring presentation.
Thank you for this nice introduction. And thank you for spending part of your Saturday afternoon with us. So this is the abstract of our presentation that you might have seen in our flyers. The presentation is structured so that we, I talk a little bit about the Czech communities around the world and how they came about, and then we'll land in Texas and examine what makes Texas Czech a unique diasporic variety of Czech, and why and how the project that we run strives to document this variety for future generations. In this slide, I just wanted to reassure anyone who is not that certain that Czechs are everywhere. According to this article, apparently every sixth Czech lives abroad, and most live in the United States, as I will show. So how and why did this happen? The three major motivating factors for emigration from the Czech lands are usually described as religious, socioeconomic, and political. Poverty drove out many low-wage workers and farmers from the Czech regions of Austria, and later Austria-Hungary, and then smaller numbers from Czechoslovakia. That's after the birth of Czechoslovakia in 1918. The largest waves date back to around 1890 to 1910. Before World War I, most immigrants headed for the United States, for Lower Austria, especially for Vienna, for Germany and Russia. And the post-World War I recession stimulated emigration to other European countries, such as France and Belgium and South America, especially Argentina. That was during the interwar period. Intergenerational economic prospects, increased mobility, and community permeability accelerated the pace of assimilation in urban areas, such as St. Louis and Chicago and Vienna. But Czech descendants with some ability in Czech can still be found among elders in many historically Czech rural communities, including those in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Romania, Russia, Serbia, Ukraine, Canada, and the United States. This is what I mean by historically Czech diasporic communities, those resulting from religious and mainly socioeconomic emigration between the 1820s and late 1930s. By the way, if you have a question, then feel free to raise your hand. And I think that Laura may be monitoring the discussion, or somebody is monitoring the discussion, and I will be happy to pause and answer it. So that is not to say that we don't find Czechs living in Australia, Paraguay, or South Africa, but only in some regions from the mid-19th century through the first decades of the 20th century. Large and in rural areas typically insulated and therefore self-sufficient settlements were formed. And this gives you some numbers of Czechs in the world. And the estimated total is about 2.5 million, again, with that peak emigration between 1890 and 1914. So what you see here is basically a amateur kind of map of circled states where most Czechs settled, or most of the Czech settlements developed. The nearly 400,000 Bohemians and Moravians came to the United States between 1850 and 1950. The Emergency Quota and National Origins Act of 1921 and 1924 slowed the influx after 1918. And while the post-World War I period rallied American Czechs in support of the new republic and later of the occupied Czechoslovakia in 1938, the post-1945 period leading to the communist coup in 1948 severed the contact and chilled the interest, which effectively ended organized immigration and began a steady decline of the Czech community in the United States. In 1980, most Czech-populated states included Illinois, Texas, and California. And that would be between 130,000 to about 210,000 Czechs. Political emigres after 1948 and 1968 added to the estimate of nearly 500,000 Czechs in America by 1989. And the 2010 census reported 1.7 million Americans claiming Czech or Czechoslovakian ancestry. And, you see the states. There are some where the communities are more vibrant, which would be especially, Texas here, which is not even circled. I kind of take it for granted. Then you have Wisconsin and Minnesota, Dakota, South Dakota here. In urban areas, the situation was more complicated because you could not have that kind of concentration. And so, in those places like in New York, there would not be as many, for example. So this map shows you Texas at the top of the states with an estimate of a certain number of Czech Americans as they are indicated here or identified here. And so you see the darkest spots like Texas and also California, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska. Oh, Nebraska! I should definitely mention Nebraska. That's a huge. That's a really vibrant state in terms of the Czech community presence and especially with the University of Nebraska and the Czech program there and all that. So, okay, so let us go to chapter 2, which is building of a new home in Texas. These are pictures from Praha, Texas. Population unknown, as you see here. There is a beautiful church in which they annually celebrate the annual Pražská pouť in August, and typically they would have a Czech mass, and they have, of course, they have a picnic and a dance afterwards, things like that. So These are the Czech populated counties in the state of Texas. I mean, I'm not showing you the counties, I'm sorry. I'm really showing you a different map, I realize now, which is just showing you about the triangle where Czechs began to move. So let me identify it. So first Czechs began to settle in Texas in 1847, and most settlements were built within the Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio triangle. So something like this, right? So mostly the central part and also going down to Corpus Christi. So Dallas, Houston, San Antonio forms the triangle reaching south to the Corpus Christi area. Many in the proximity, many of them moved in the same locations that Germans would. As for Czech speakers in Texas, the 2010 census reports around 8,700 Czechs. Czech speakers out of 136,000 persons of Czech and Czechoslovak descent, though we don't know how many of these are actually self-identified diasporic speakers, which would be people from those, multiple generations from these historical Czech communities. And if the 2020 census can be trusted, then number would be about 5,200. So it's steadily declining. But again, there could be some people who just moved to Texas. They also obviously will indicate that they speak Czech. And so the numbers cannot be fully trusted. So the settlers built their own churches and halls, like the Slavonic, Slovanská podporující jednota státu Texas. I'm going to say it in Czech. It's SPJST, which is basically it's an insurance organization or insurance company right now, but it started as a Czech one. They built schools and dance halls and fraternal, religious, and theatrical organizations. They patronized their own businesses and stores and pubs, and they published their own newspapers. So amongst about 30 of them published in Texas before World War II were newspapers like Svoboda, which means freedom, Hospodář, which means something like husbands, men, and then or farmer, maybe you could say, and Našinec, like one of our own. And Našinec is the one that actually survived the longest, and Mr. Joe Brabel, the last Našinec editor, retired from running the paper in 2018, and so it was from 1914 through 2018 the paper was alive. Now I want to move to the third chapter of our talk, which has to do with the making of a diasporic language. So just so that we can have an understanding on some basics for this concept. So the term Czech diaspora refers to Czech-speaking locations outside of the present-day territory of the Czech Republic, specifically the regions of Bohemia and Moravia. A new diasporic variety of Czech developed in some locations, like Texas Czech in Texas. The necessary ingredients for language maintenance are these three crucial links that you see here, which would be home, school, and community. And if one link in this chain weakens, then the language begins to wither, like language transmission within the home, and the language is used in the community shaped by institutional support. That is, if bilingualism or multilingualism is not supported institutionally, then it's going to be discouraged in schools, and then we have the languages decline. The strongest years of American Czech spanned from the 1890s through the 1930s. Language maintenance has been affected by the usual sociolinguistic factors such as location, that is, if it's more insulated, more chance of a survival, a type of employment, mostly farming, which again, advantageous for Texas, community relations, tight, self-sufficient social networks. I just said that they basically moved in their own circles for a very, very long time. Only gradual acceptance of intermarriage. There's a lot of funny stories about this one. Gradual reduction and abandonment of intergenerational language transmission after the World War II. And religion, here especially the existence of Catholic private schools and the unity of brethren, Czech summer camps that were organized, which basically, they would import Czech priests for a period, and that would help always kind of inject the Czech, into the community. And also access to heritage language education, and that one is really crucial, which was increasingly curtailed, starting with the Texas 1871 English language, English as a medium of instruction law in public schools. So 1871 that happened. So Texas Czech is a critically endangered diasporic dialect of European Czech. That's how I would, I guess, describe it best. A product of some 170 years of contact between Moravian Czech and English in Texas. Now, you see here the various dialectal regions of the current Czech Republic. So this is defined by the current borders. But you will probably quickly appreciate that there is a great variety of dialects in the Czech Republic. So the dialect is no longer transmitted to next generations. Very few fluent speakers remain, and its current use is limited to words and phrases reaffirming the belonging to the Texas Czech community. It is a blend of archaic Eastern Moravian and Silesian and Lycian dialects. So I have highlighted those for you, those main regions. Also, there are traces of Central as well as Northeastern and Southeastern Bohemia. Southeastern Bohemia is much more typical, for example, for Minnesota, where you would have a lot of people from southern parts of the current Czech Republic. So all of these were kind of, mixed and recycled and mixed with the school Czech and English spoken in Texas, and voila, you have Texas Czech. So Wallachia and Lycia are the most of those those largest regions from which the people came, and the dialect there. For a very long time, the dialects were quite distinct, very distinct in fact, and so that also gave kind of Texas Czech that uniqueness that I want to point out today. So compared to other American Czech varieties, such as those in Minnesota, Nebraska, Kansas, or Wisconsin, Texas Czech is unique in that the dialect concentration in that baseline originates in these Eastern Moravian and Silesian dialects, that's what I said, Lycian, Silesian, either way. And this map also shows this. It was created by a community historian and genealogist, Mr. Janak, who based it on the study of tombstones in Texas cemeteries. And you can see that basically what you saw before and what you see now is quite consistent. So, like other minority languages, Texas Czech is marked by a shift toward the dominant language quite idiosyncratic grammar and very limited use. In the process of language shift, which is basically the shift to that majority language from the minority language that's being kind of embattled. Three major processes we may call deceleration and acceleration and attrition in contact are at play. And with the slowing down of change, like the deceleration, Texas Czech has retained the, and I'm just using some examples here to show you what I mean by those terms. So language deceleration, an example that would fit this phenomenon is something like what's called pluralis respectivus, which is basically the honorific plural. Okay, you might be aware that, like French, Czech also has the two distinction, right? You have T, B, you have a formal U and you have an informal U. So in Czech, that's the case as well. And with that language deceleration, what we still would find in Texas is a very, very old feature of that you've found in the Czech language, which would be that pluralis respectivus. So it would be like oni měli farmu, which is basically you saying you are referring to somebody in plural, because it's a father, you know, it's any kind of respected elder who would be referred as such. Maminka měli, like my mother had, or tatínek měli, which měli is basically that verb in plural. Language acceleration, on the other hand, means that some tendencies that are present in the source language tend to spread faster and wider through the contact language system, where standard Czech has negligible influence. One example from Texas Czech is the overuse of these, we call them demonstratives, be like ten, ta, to, when you're pointing at something, right? Which is accelerated by the use of definite articles like the in English. So then, you know, those appear in front of the nouns much, much more frequently. So that kind of a change would be sped up. And then you have attrition in contact, and that one is most fun. So if you look at all these, some of these examples here, I'm just using simplified terms like blending and translation, meaning extension, which happen. So in terms of the blending, I wonder if any of you could actually recognize some of these words, where they come from. So you have peaches, what could it be? Housey, drugstore.
Peaches, drugstore, house.
Picksack. What do you think that is? That's like a bag, like a huge bag of, you know, that they were using to collect cotton. Tribovat, anyone?
Drive?
Yeah, which is weird, isn't it? Because you know, you would expect that it would start with at least a D. Pikovat, like to pick cotton, especially. That's where it came from. Hontovat.
Hunt, go hunting.
Very good. Brownové, pinkové.
Brown and pink.
Brown and pink. So nouns, adjectives, thank you. Nouns, adjectives, verbs, you know, they basically, you know, there would be that morphological integration happening, you know, so you would adjust it to the majority language. Translation is in various calking that has to do with, like, you know, adjusting the language to the pattern, the word order that you would usually use in English. And so some really bizarre structures can develop in these settings. Something like you see here, tetka udělají děcka to pít, which is basically auntie will make the kids drink it or eat drink, right? This is a structure that would never appear in the Czech language. It is really a very unique, you know, English way. And so this is what you would find. And then meaning extensions are quite typical too. Like you would have, like go in English, you go everywhere. You can go on the plane and you can go, by foot and you can take a train and you still go. But in Czech, you do have specific terms for that. And so it's extended. And so then my sister, moje sestra šla do České republiky. It's like to go on foot to the Czech Republic as opposed to flying, right? So those things are happening. Texas Czechs tend to denigrate Texas Czech as compared to European Czech, that is the norm-providing ideal language. And so some of these descriptions very astutely, based on the conspicuous features like the word blends we have just looked at, represent these kinds of sentiments. So like, potrhané, jak když leje z boketa, máme namíšený slova v našem češtině, that's this one. To už není čeština, moje děti tomu rozumí, ale už neumí. But these top ones are actually, I think that Claude, tried to use, kind of put something else in here that I didn't want to be here. But you see here, to je jak ten Tex-Mex, that Mexican, Spanish would be one of the major languages in Texas. But I love this one, potrhané, jak když leje z boketa, which is torn up as if poured from a bucket. I think that that's a very good representation of it. So what are the few remaining contexts that encourage the use of Texas Czech if the occasion is right? Well, here are some examples, including greetings, teasing, joking, emotional reactions, like, things like jejdečky, jejdanečky, or emotional or weather talk that you see here, like zapršet by mělo, we need rain. So those would be like very brief kind of exchanges. Of course, how are you doing? Jak se máš? Right? Those things would still happen. And moving on to the next chapter, and I see that maybe I'm spending way too much time already, but and I said I wouldn't. So asymmetrical bilingualism. So now I guess you can guess from what I was describing, this is what's developing here, right? So you would be shifting to English slowly but surely. And then it results in language loss. And if language revitalization programs are not in place, as is the case in Texas, and the community's gradual shift in focus, then the communities gradually focus or shift, the focus shifts. I'm sorry. The focus shifts much more to the other symbolic expressions of identity and community belonging, as it did in the Czech Texas. So the Texas Czech dialect being one of the markers of Texas Czech ethnocultural identity on a steady decline, then community members turn to other things, other expressions of their belonging, like ethnic festivals and karaoke games, that's the card game, parades of costumes and floats, collages, food, pivo, of course, beer drinking, and importantly, polka band performances and dances. As skilled genealogists, Texas Czechs excel at organizing, fundraising, and building memorials that celebrate and teach about the community's rich history. And so one of those is the Texas Czech or Czech Heritage Society of Texas, which would be a huge organization. And then you would have the Texas Czech Heritage and Cultural Center, which is a big center with this historical village with the buildings from back in the day that they moved over to this village in LaGrange. So here what you see is basically what is being done. So you would have some classes, right? As community classes, community language classes, you would have kids would be coming to Texas Czech Heritage and Cultural Center. That's on this from this. This is actually taken from the newsletter for the Texas Czech Heritage and Cultural Center. And so these children would be visiting. This is when I went to schools and I was talking to kids and I was asking them, "Would you want to learn Czech?" And so a lot of them raised their hand, which was maybe a decade ago. So I think that it's we are kind of past that. But Czech Heritage and Cultural Center in La Grange is a very important building in this part of Texas. It is a product of one of the most successful fundraising events in the community's history, and the historical village on the grounds of the center is amazing. Like here is a kind of, again, an amateur picture, but it's taken from the website. This would be like one of those corn cribs that they would build. They have various buildings in which sometimes they turn them into a themed museum. It's a very beautiful place. They even have a chapel that is modeled on a chapel in Moravia. And this is from the 20th anniversary of the center. So, they do all these celebrations of the generations of immigrants. And of course, there's always food, there's always dancing and singing. So the center also holds a Czech Youth and Family Day and the Czech Heritage Society of Texas, then features demonstrations, workshops, Czech bingo. There's a lot of stuff going on. These are the newsletters that they publish. So this is that Náš český život is for the Texas Czech Heritage and Cultural Center. This one is for the Texas Czech Heritage Society of Texas. That one has about 15 chapters. And of course, then, you would have all these, things that also, again, symbolic representations that show that you are what you are, right? And so you would have the caps and T-shirts, buttons, bumper stickers, other merchandise, which is quite, quite prominent, and that's the best fest you would run into. Most people wearing some shirt that will say something like "Jsem Česká, dej mi hubičku," or whatever, like "I'm Czech, give me a kiss." So the virtual life of Texas Czechs includes their active presence amongst the groups of Facebook and prolific group of electronic Czechs, they called themselves before. Now they are, I think, just Texas Czechs. And various platforms that also, just if you type into Google Texas Czechs, then there's so much content. That also teenagers, though, are involved, demonstrates that Texas Czech culture's agility still continues to recreate itself. And so that's what I'm showing you here, like the group of singers and dancers. The bottom picture that comes from actually the high school in West. Then the queens, of course, because that we also have to have. So we have the Czech Heritage Society's annual Miss Texas Czech and Slovak Queen pageant, and then the queen is selected and with her little sisters, and then she has a mission for a couple of years when she's supposed to be promoting the heritage and being an ornament in the kroj, everywhere she goes. By kroj, I mean the costume. These actually, a lot of them, that would be a topic of its own. I can't even go there. But that's a big part of the Texas Czech heritage. Chapter 4, I promise, almost there. So we started in 2012, and it was to make available speech and print data through its open access digital archive of audio recordings and historic documents gathered from ethnic Czech Moravians in Texas over that time period. And so since we had, the project is actually housed at the University of Texas at Austin. And right now we are focusing on building the archive of the recordings and archive of the audio recordings. This is not a video archive, but it's audio recordings from the interviews with the speakers of Texas Czech. So this is the link where you will find it. This is how this stuff gets collected. We have several databases. One of them is from the late 1960s through 1980s, and it's very nice that we have that because then we can trace how the Texas Czech how Texas Czech has changed over time. Of course, we also have recordings from late 1980s, from 1989. That's like 10 hours. There was a professor from Charles University who came over here. And then we have my 300 plus hours from Texas, including those that I recorded then, another 350 we recorded in the 2000s. Because I do keep returning and try to add. So there is a lot of material, basically. So if you are interested in visiting the Texas Czech Legacy Project archive, then you would want to create a new account, like you see here, right? So you would you just set up your username and password and you should be in. It should really not be too hard to do that. You just have to remember the password. Then when you get into the archive interface, then you actually would be able to search by various facets, like what kind of collection is it? Like who is the one who interviewed these people? Then various other things like location and gender. You could also do the topic. So what we tried to do initially was to kind of cut it up, to segment it so that we would have like 2-minute segments or something like that where you would have a certain topic being covered. And then the hope was that people would be searching, I don't know, for picking cotton in Texas or something. And then wherever the word cotton appeared, then you would be able to see all the segments that have to do, or they have something to say to this topic, right? So this is what you see here. This is the topics that we, like example of that. You can listen to the MP3, you can also download it, and then you have the transcript. And the transcript you can either you can view it as is, very kind of detailed transcription, or you can just switch to the feature that's called read along. And when you switch to it, then it's just going to give you what you see here on the right, which is like the prose, what the people were saying in Texas Czech and how does it translate into English. And you might have noticed that I said Svatava Jakobsen is that her database is one of those central databases that we have. And so she is very important to this endeavor, and Anne started putting some things on our LinkedIn if you are interested about, like what kind of a figure Svatava Jakobsen was, and I'm kind of trying to retrace what she's done and organize it somewhat and do something with it. But she was in Texas in the 70s and in the 80s at the University of Texas at Austin as the Texas Chair of Czech Studies. That's the position. That's what they called it. So yeah, that's when she drove around and she fell in love with everything Texas Czech. Among her many projects, Jakobsen envisioned and directed in 1984 a film, a documentary featuring the life and folklore in and around Moravia, Texas. And so among our various projects, what we want to do is to make this documentary available to the public. Here, this is the picture of the current team. So those are basically the local activists, people who are genealogists, or they are board members of the Texas Czech Heritage Center. Thaddeus Polášek is a teacher of Czech, about the only one that actually also tries to teach online classes, projecting to high schools and to colleges. Woody Smith, also from the board, and the another person who is central to it, who is actually the past director of the Texas Czech Heritage and Cultural Center. And now we have Stepan, who is our most recent recruit, and I am thankful to everyone who is trying to move this project forward. Here you see what we've recovered. So we have an argument for the film, or script for the film, that Svatava Jakobsen came up with about the Czech language in Texas. And while we have not located the sound reels, which is a huge problem for us, obviously, we have recovered and detailed film transcript, and we also have the film itself, which is in a remarkably good shape. Here you see, here also what you see is, like some basically stills from the documentary. And so what we are trying to do now is find, and we'll speak to that a little bit, but we basically have Jakobsen's recordings of various kinds. And so we try to go through all of them. She did a huge part of this job herself, to go through it and identify potentials that would match with the recording, with these recordings, with the actual film reels. And so one way or another, we are hoping that we will still put it together, even though we don't have any, the sound reels are lost, we can't find them. Then we have the people on the tapes that we can match with the images in the documentary. And of course, we've been also searching for budget filmmakers, because this can be a very costly kind of endeavor. So yeah, that's it. And I know that I took more time than I said that I would, and I apologize to everyone, all the organizers that I did. There's just so much stuff that can be talked about when you open up the topic of Texas Czechs. So thank you. If you have any questions.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a really wonderful, robust presentation, and absolutely worth the time. I really appreciate it. So I think that I don't see any questions in the chat right now. So I'd say that since we're almost at 3 o'clock, why don't we go ahead and take our...
I think that there is a question.
yes,
from,
Laura, go ahead.
Brianda.
Thanks so much. I always have questions. I have more questions than probably. If somebody else wants to just stop me, go ahead. Thank you so much. This is so inspiring and so remarkable that you've done all of this work. And the thing that you talked about last was this I don't know, this documentary film that's been sort of half lost because you've lost the sound, but you do have other sound. And I want to tell you, I recently saw a movie here in Norway. I live up in the north of Norway, and they had silent film reels. This was basically from the times about the 1920s through to somewhere maybe about the 1980s. But what they did was they had sound recordings of these people's actual voices. And it's called Folk fra havet, the people from the sea. And they just combined these people speaking in their own voices. There was no narrator. And there were just these film clips with the actual voices of people from the same time and an approximate place, and it was extremely powerful. So I would encourage you to continue with this, even though it might seem like a kind of a I don't know, a difficult project, a difficult to go. And I can also, if you remind me, I can also send you, I can find a link to this movie, at least
Oh,
information.
yeah, I would
That'd be
love to
great.
see that. Yeah.
I mean, it was all in Norwegian, but it was, it
Still,
was
just to
pretty
see how
interesting.
it's done. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit because you had like the actual, you had everybody was speaking in their own very authentic voices.
Yes.
And also here in Norway, the thing about speaking in many different dialects is that's really, really powerful in this culture. So that was also like super fascinating.
So
Um,
Laura, if you have time to stick around, I'm actually going to be talking about how we found all this audio that can go with the movie
oh, okay. I'll shut
in
up.
the next half. No, it's okay.
No,
I
no,
just
no,
want to tell you, I'm
no.
going to talk about that.
So you're going to talk about that. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Mhm.
But then maybe I'll just wait on the rest of my questions and wait till after Anne has talked.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I would encourage you to continue
Yeah,
with that because I think it can be something really powerful and cool.
it would be really great.
And thanks to Lida for her wonderful presentation. I just want to say a couple of things about myself. I do have a doctorate in Slavic linguistics. As a matter of fact, my Czech teacher and my doctoral dissertation director, Laura Yanda, is online, and I appreciate her comments. But I'm also of Czech heritage. My people immigrated from Bohemia, and you saw the map of Czech Republic. They immigrated from Bohemia around the region of Prague. To the Midwest of the United States, eventually settling in Cedar Rapids, where there's a huge Czech community. And my grandfather spoke fluent Czech. He's American, but he was raised speaking Czech. Unfortunately, he married an American woman, and they did not raise my father speaking Czech. But I learned it as an adult, so I'm happy to be able to say that I can understand the language fairly well. I'm getting better at speaking it, but I love it, and that's one of the things that attracted me to this project. I just recently retired from the Department of Defense. I was a Russian linguist at NSA, and I worked there for 21 years. And a lot of the focus of my work was um, I started out as a language analyst, but then moving into more technical leadership, was helping analysts find and analyze intelligence of various types, but especially working with analysts who are trying to work in languages that aren't their native language necessarily, and working to produce intelligence from languages from all over the world. Mine happened to be Russian in that case. But so when I ran across this project and met Lida and was talking to her, I realized that this project is on like a small scale, sort of the same problem that I worked for years and years and years at the Department of Defense, which is how can you find the needle in the haystack of amazing, intelligence or interesting things to say in a bunch of data that no human could possibly ever get through on their own. That's one thing. Also, it needs to be done yesterday because we're running out of time for whatever reason. In this case, the speakers of this language who have participated in the recordings and in the documentary video are now all of them are over 70, and it would be nice to get this documentary film and some audio with that so they can see it before unfortunately they pass on. They're the last sort of native speakers of this dialect. And then, of course, there's always the condition that you have to do all this with no resources, so there's no money and no people to do it. And so this is the classic Department of Defense problem that I solved for years and years. And so this meets all of those criteria. And so I had to title my briefing "Scaling the Mission" because there couldn't be a more DoD title. But what I'm talking about today is how AI, which we all have opinions about, how it can be used for good and how we're trying to use it to accelerate saving this language, exposing this dialect, and exposing the culture to a lot of the people who are interested in it and who deserve to see sort of this final product of a lot of this work that's been going on for years. So, okay. Lida touched on this in her presentation earlier. 450 hours of recordings awaiting transcription. Actually, I think it's probably a lot more than that. And what's behind this number is that originally they were all on reel-to-reel tapes. And so thankfully they've all been now digitized and you can actually access them on a computer. That's a huge first step. Otherwise, you know, what are you going to do with that kind of material? The catch is, though, especially from Svatove Jakobsson's materials, um, it's not all people speaking Texas Czech. And none of them are titled, like none of these files are titled in such a way that you can tell what they are. And so part of my job has been just going through, like Lida gave me access, I've just been listening. Okay, this one is Texas Czech, they're speaking the whole time in Czech. This one is a music festival and no one is speaking, this is only music. Now we're interviewing someone of Russian descent in English who happens to live in Texas. I mean, it's just kind of all over the place. So one of the challenges has been kind of triaging down to get at the core of like where we want to focus on the language, where do we need to look? And that's a lot of the work that I've been doing. There's probably AI that could speed that up. That's been a manual process, but at least we're starting to narrow it down to like what's a reasonable, you know, what are we targeting? In 2010, the speaker age range was 54 to 92. Add 16 years to that, and these speakers are increasingly, you know, unfortunately dying and they're getting old, and they aren't making any really new heritage, new speakers of this unique Texas dialect of Czech. And you saw on Lida demonstrated what it looks like now on the website. There is actual language you can listen to, and it's been transcribed and it's been translated and annotated beautifully. And she's talked to me about the way they did this. And if you have worked in translation or transcription, as some of you on this call I'm sure have, you know how it can be a very, very manual process. And it takes a long time. And the tool that they had used for this is great for what it is doing. It's aligning audio, it's allowing annotation, it's allowing translation, but it's manual. And it was taking 60 hours of labor to transcribe and annotate and fully process 1 hour of Texas Czech. That's a really long time. And remember, we don't have armies of native speakers of this dialect to put on this. And honestly, without being able to pay anybody, there's just not a lot of human resource we can get to do this. And that's just, even if we could get that, that's just a really long time and very labor intensive sort of situation. So can we use all of this magical AI that's out there now? Can we do something with something just to give us a little bit of a head start? And so I was looking around, and so my first thing was, okay, how do we at least get the audio into written form? So it's a speech to text kind of analytic that we want to look at. So, and there's so much out there. You know, when I left DOD right at about a year ago, I mean, it was just like a kid in a candy store because there was all this technology that now I could just start playing with and, you know, testing and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and what's you know, hype and what's not. So I looked at several different types of things that can do transcription. So you can upload an audio and then it'll put it into something. A lot of the programs at that time, and this may have even improved in the last year, but a lot of programs at that time didn't have Czech as an option. They would have Russian, they might have Polish, because I think that reflects what the Poles are more doing in this space than anything else. They would have some major world language, but a lot of them wouldn't even do Czech language to put it into anything. But then I found this tool, Sonics, which honestly is kind of the hero of my world right now. So it's a speech to text tool. It does other things. It does have some AI built in to do other kind of analysis and everything, but it is intuitive. It is, I mean, it's very easy to use. It's not free, but it is not expensive. And honestly, I've worked with the actual humans behind this tool, and they have made us a nice deal. They have, you know, given us kind of a discount because we're doing good work and we're trying to put good things to use, but to put AI to use for good reasons. And I mean, I think this is really going to help us at least get a lot of that audio into written format, which we can then analyze in other ways. So basically, you can take one of these cuts, then after I've scanned through, I don't know, probably 100 or 200 of these cuts and identified which ones are in Texas Czech. You upload an MP3 to this thing, and within about 2 minutes at most, it spits out a transcript that, depending on how the audio quality is, it already will break it out to like speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3. It puts it into what it thinks is standard written Czech, spisovna czeština, the standard format, grammatical Czech. But the thing is, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, generally that's awesome. But the thing is, like we just saw in Lida's presentation, Texas Czech is not standard Czech. It's a dialect of a dialect, and it's like an archaic dialect of a dialect, and it's mixed with all this Texas English. So it's not perfect. And it's never going to be perfect. You can see on the screen, this is kind of what it will look like. And if you read Czech, you can tell that's actually Czech. And then over to the right here on the screen, it spits out what is also like how it thinks it did, how it thinks it got. So very confident in 80%, fairly confident in 16%, and slightly confident in 2%. Well, that's kind of a bold assertion, I think, because it's actually much lower than that, actually, how it did. But it's a great starting place. And so our strategy is going to be getting as much as we can, getting audio uploaded and transcribed by Sonics into a written format. We actually have now a student. I saw her online. If you're out there, Antonia, I think I saw you. A student at Charles University in Czech Republic who is going to help us sort of back correct the transcripts into Texas Czech based on what she can hear as a native speaker and based on guidelines that Lida and her team had developed over years and documentation we have on what that dialect actually sounds like and actually is in reality. And so our hope is that we can get a lot of these recordings in written form. This gives us a great starting place to have Sonics transcribe it into this format, and then we're going to sort of back correct it into what it actually sounds like in Texas Czech. And so on the previous slide, I mentioned the traditional pipeline is 60 hours of work for 1 hour of audio. With Sonics, our transcriber reviews about 10 minutes of audio in 80 to 90 minutes. And that's a 7 times speed up on the correction page. Now, that's not the whole full Elon pipeline with the translation and all that. We're not doing that. But like that is a much more optimistic ratio of work to output than having to do everything manually in sort of a more heavy duty type tool. And so I'm hopeful that we can actually do a lot with this. And I think Sonics has really been a great start with that. Okay, so let's say we get 100 hours of Texas Czech into written form, and it's all been corrected and it looks great. But then we have another problem. Now we have 200 page or whatever pages of text to do something with. So we just have a sort of a different volume problem on a different scale. So what are we going to do with that? So one of the things I've started playing around with also was downloading the transcript output from Sonics, even in its imperfect form. This is pre-corrected. This is when it's doing its best guess at Czech language and what it's trying to write in it. Download that transcript. And then I played around with 3 sort of easily accessible, free AIs. I looked at ChatGPT, I looked at Claude, and I looked at Perplexity. And I basically asked them, okay, with this transcript, pull out, the general topics and themes that these speakers are talking about, pull out place names, pull out human names, and organize them together under categories and give me the timestamps. So that a person, and do it in English, because we don't have any translations of yet, but just put this all in English. And so, long story short, it took me a while, but on the left, you see this is the prompt I used, and Claude, by the way, was far better at this than either of the two other tools. It did it really well and very logically and without a lot of having to coach it and reteach it every time. So this is the prompt I used now for this is the standard prompt I used for every transcript. I put that in, and here's the transcript, and it outputs something like here is on the right, which is an analysis of what is in each transcript, broken out by topic. Here you see local churches and community landmarks, and then by the timestamps of when the speakers are talking about them. And so typically, this is a small snapshot of what it is, but for a 30-minute cut, typically these analyses are 2 or 3 pages or something like that. So then, I mean, maybe one day when we kind of get back to what are we going to do with the website, I could envision posting the audio and posting something like this. It's kind of a guide to each transcript, and somebody can just click on the audio, find the timestamp, and listen to it. Or, eventually we'll probably have translations and that sort of thing. But I think this way, just trying to think how to expose this material and make it available to both Czech speakers, Texas Czech speakers, and just English speakers or linguists, whoever wants to listen to it. I think we have some things we can work with here. For now, this is just a good reference for us to know where things are and who's talking about what and where and when. So that was Claude. Okay, this detective story. This has to do with the film, the documentary footage that Lida mentioned. Sotov Jakobsen had filmed this documentary in Moravia, Texas. There was audio that went with it, but the audio's been lost. However, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of audio, and some of it is the same. Some of the people in the film are the same oral histories we have in these recordings. And so what I did, because again, this is such an issue of scale and cross-referencing and analyzing, I uploaded again to Claude the film script that had sort of the narration of the scenes and what everybody was doing and who was in it and that sort of thing. And another document that Lida had shared with me, people had recently met and confirmed the names of the people who were in the film and the topics, and suggested what audio cuts might match the speakers in the film. And I had Claude generate this list here for me. So this is sort of cross-referencing those two documents, and this list is probably the best guess at what we have of audio in our archives that would match this film. And I've blurred out the speakers' names on this one, but it identified speaker, it identified what scenes, what reels, where all this audio could be found. And then I added some notations over here. Do we have the audio? Have we created the transcript analysis of it? Has Antonia been able to put the actual transcript back into Texas Czech? That's, we haven't really started that quite yet, and so on. And so we have narrowed down from hundreds and hundreds of hours of potential Czech footage and audio to here's actually, no kidding, the 20 or so cuts that we want to focus on. And now that we have our student who can help us do the transcription, this is the priority. This is what we're going to try to get done soonest. And all of this analysis was done because very rapidly, because I was able to use AI and ask questions of it and have it make connections that probably one day I could have made, but it would have taken me a very, very long time. And so now here's our goal. This is we're in process of processing these cuts, and this is our best guess at most of the audio that would go with that film. Okay, so what AI can and cannot do. AI can process hundreds of hours of audio quickly. It can organize raw transcripts into structured documents. It can cross-reference dates, names, places across recordings. So we could take those script analyses and upload all of that and say, give me every reference to agriculture and their timestamps with their speakers and all that. So we could make these big meta indices of what these things are in minutes versus months and months of hand coding and trying to figure that out. It can flag uncertain passages for expert review. That has to do with the Sonics having a good way to add notes and add commentary along with each section broken out next to it. And it gives human experts a running start. You're not sitting down with headphones and starting with a blank screen. I mean, that's, or with a tool that you have to learn how to do and then start with a blank screen. So it has some advantages. AI cannot and will not ever speak Texas Czech. It cannot hear the difference between a loan word and a transcription error. So again, you tell Sonics that you're trying to put something, that it should be listening for Czech when you upload your MP3. So if like Lida demonstrated, words that might be Czech, but they kind of sound English, and sometimes they won't use the Czech word for house. They use house, or excuse, and that sort of thing. So it doesn't always recognize when there's actually English mixed in there, So, but again, that's why the human has to come in and sort of back correct it and recognize that this could be English as much as it could be some kind of a Czech word. It does not replace 25 years of fieldwork knowledge or more and expertise, and the fact that that there's a lot of speakers grew up learning this language like a native dialect, and the AI will never have that. It will never have the human context or the be able to make linguistic judgment calls. That's why you have to have a human in the loop. You have to have a human who ideally it would be someone who could speak Texas Czech, but a Czech native speaker can do a lot of this work. An English native speaker who knows some Czech can do some of this work. There are different strengths for both approaches, but a human has to be in the loop. And then it also just can't verify what the recordings actually say. Like it's doing its best, and it does a good job, but it is what it is. It's a starting place for it. So, and there's a quote there, AI multiple is human experience, it doesn't replace it. That is absolutely for sure. Okay, so I went through all that very quickly. If we had a concrete budget or money ask, this is the slide on which I would ask it, but we do not currently have try to be raising some money, especially trying to get a filmmaker to get some of the work done. I could definitely see some things we might need resources for in the future. But what you can do right now is you can kind of support preservation efforts. This whole AI thing is kind of a pilot to see how much use we could get out of it. Really, this was relatively low cost to do all of the recordings and to do all the things we might want to do with it. Would be some financial ask, but really this was fairly low cost. But we're gonna, I'm gonna continue to talk to Lida, and we're gonna keep seeing what we can do and how we can use it. So we do have a LinkedIn page. If you're on LinkedIn, the Texas Czech website is there. If you're not on LinkedIn, I'm sure we could figure out a way you can contact me or Lida directly, and we could do something else. We're both individually on Facebook, so there's ways to stay connected if you're interested, and we would appreciate just if you're interested at all in the AI part of the language part of the Texas part of the Czech part, that would be great. Volunteer if you know a filmmaker are you have skills yourself, or if you maybe even know a filmmaker who may not be interested in doing this, but they might know other filmmakers, or any connections or leads on that case would be that we would appreciate that very much. We've tried to run down some in Texas because ideally the person would come from the community and care about this, this project in particular. Nothing has panned out with that quite yet, but we are always hopeful. But really, any leads for filmmakers, and thank you, Laura, for suggesting what you did, because that's a really good point. There could be other ways we could look at doing some of this. And then again, I think the next big project, the milestone we're kind of looking at and focusing on now is the film, is trying to finish that film and trying to get the audio processed in a way that can be connected with the film. But then we need someone with the skills to actually make that happen. So we're trying to finish all this and appreciate any support or interest in helping us make that happen. Again, no ask right now, but please stay connected if you're at all interested. And I'm sure any little bit when we do ask for it will be helpful, because again, this project doesn't have a huge endowment. We don't have resources. Basically, there's now 3 of us working on it, so that's awesome. But it's we're pretty limited in resources here, but it's definitely a passion project, I think, for all of us. So appreciate your attention, and definitely happy to take any questions about anything.
Great, thank you so much, Anne. And so if anybody has questions or comments, feel free to, I see Laura Jonda has more questions, so I don't see anything else in the chat. So
Yeah,
please,
it's me again. Sorry.
go ahead.
I put this in the chat, but there is.
Oh,
Yes, I don't. If anybody has seen the documentary film Mr. Nobody Against Putin, I know the person who lives next door to him and is a very close friend of his, and so this would be a Czech
wow.
producer. I mean, that film got an Oscar. I mean, that's so I don't know, that might be a possibility. This might be something that they would be very interested in.
That's
I
awesome.
think you could also talk to those Norwegians that I sent the IMDb link to that. I think you could probably talk to the Norwegians. I have some friends in the filmmaking community here in Norway. Maybe I could help out with that. I don't know.
Thank you, Laura. That's amazing. I loved Pan Putin.
I have another
Pan
1,000 questions, but I think I'll
Putin.
take them later. And you and I can take them separately.
Thank you, Laura.
I have a basic question, if you can hear me. First of all, congratulations, both of you, for your tremendous work. I'm just curious. You're obviously looking for funding. Have you considered at all approaching the Czech government or even the Czech embassy? Or is that something you prefer not to do? Because I would think it would be in their best interest, and yours probably as well, to go that route.
It would be, the prospects are not very high that they would fund something like this. We've tried to do projects with, I have, with Charles University, and basically from trying to do like a big project focused on heritage languages, and we were applying for grants like at least maybe 3-4 times we tried, and it was not funded. Like the Institute of Corpus Linguistics in Prague, where these kinds of this kind of work is being done, they also experienced quite a bit of cuts in their funding, and also lost positions. So, I also do like I'm a member of the International Association of Teachers of Czech, and we published a newsletter. And for the newsletter, every year, we ask the I think it's from the ministry of Foreign Affairs, we ask for funds for it, and it's not much. It's just like less than maybe $6,000 or something like that overall for a year, and it's it's becoming more and more difficult. So part of it is that we can, like, I guess for me, I have to choose where I invest my time. I mean, maybe we can, if we can enlist somebody who could help us write grants while we are doing the work, but I just can't, at this point, I just can't do it. And I don't think that, and is very busy with, doing the transcriptions, or preparing that. Anyway, I think that if we had assistance, we could still try. But yeah.
Thank you for the answer. I was gonna suggest the Texas Film Commission too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would think that
something
would
that
be one that they might be interested in that.
Yeah, there is a filmmaker in Texas whose name is Jeff Brown. He did the film that maybe some of you might recognize. It was called November, Listopad. It was about about the events of 1989. But so he does know a lot of filmmakers in Texas, and I've had several conversations with him. And it, when it comes to the budgeting for something like this, and I start seeing those, multiple zeros, I mean, there's just no way. So we have to find if we find somebody who can be like more of a budget filmmaker who is passionate about this kind of subject, right? That they would do it partially also because they want to help highlight the community and the language, right? Then that would be the ideal combination, because then we can bring the costs down and we would have somebody who would actually pour that passion into the project. So there is a local person that a friend of mine knows who is also a filmmaker, and she's been talking to him now. But we have not, as yet, we have not located him.
Okay, thank you.
But I will, thank you for reminding me, because I did want to get in touch with someone in the Texas Film Commission. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I have one other question, and then I probably won't have any more. I'm just curious, you may have mentioned this before, but why Texas? I mean, there are Czech, populations all over the United States, in my own neck of the woods, Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota. What is so special about Texas?
The land, the farmland that was available, that they were promised when they like there were agencies that advertised Texas as this promised land, for a lot of people who were suffering economically, like, and so and they were promised, a certain number of acres, and they it doesn't seem like they really knew what they were getting themselves into, considering the climate, considering the like they had to clear all that land first, and sometimes they didn't even have the tools, and they had to like they had to work for someone maybe for several years before they actually could start working their land. It was very, very hard, but the land was what drew them to agriculture. That's what drew mainly those from those farming communities through the people to Texas.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified. Why did you pick Texas to do your research?
Why did I pick Texas?
Right.
Why did I pick Texas? So why did I pick Texas? How do I answer that shortly?
Yeah, because again, there's, like I said, it could be any place in the United States.
Yeah, there are various communities. I think that I was really interested in like it was more like a linguistic anthropology kind of project I was doing. And I was really interested you know, I mean, when I heard that there are Czechs in you know, different states, which I didn't know, because when I came here, you know, I was also a graduate student and didn't know much about the United States, but as I learned, right? So I was able to establish some contacts, and once you have that, you know, it just draws you in that direction. And so I started learning more and more about Texas. And then I learned about Jacobson, and I got a scholarship, you know, to go to Austin to transcribe some of her, or do at least little vignettes for the Briscoe Center for American History in Austin, right? So you know, that would bring me over there. And then, you know, like a publisher of Hospodář would promise that they can house me, you know, for, I don't know, a month or something while I collect my interviews. And so, you know, I just with all those people, like the Czech Educational Foundation of Texas and the Czech ex-students of the University of Texas, it's just like, basically there are many organizations. And so back in the late 1990s, they were still quite active. And so they really liked this. They liked the fact that there was a Czech person running around Texas, interviewing people, you know, trying to do something with it, right? So I don't think that it fully answers your question, because that
No, it does.
when Texas was selected, I cannot really pinpoint it, but
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it really was through those contacts.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Lida and Anne, for your excellent presentation and contributions. We truly appreciate your time and lending your expertise to our little National Museum of Language, and also sharing all your devoted work to this fascinating project. So we will wish everybody a wonderful afternoon. And again, thank you to all our attendees who shared part of your Saturday with us. Definitely keep an eye out for other speaker programs on our website, and we'll have some more announced soon. Otherwise, I wish everyone a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and good luck.